Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. For our next session, we move into a fishbowl format, a dynamic open dialogue designed to draw in multiple voices. The conversation is moderated by Mr. Emsad Dizdarević from Transparency International in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Please take it away.
Thank you. Welcome again. I got this honor from organizers of this conference to moderate the last session of the conference, which is challenging by itself. But I hope that we will manage to include all of you in the discussion, which is, I think, that maybe the most important discussion that we had during these days about genuine participation decision-making process. I know that we all have our problems and challenges in our countries regarding the participation in decision-making process, and we will try to discuss a bit about the problems, but also to look for the solutions. What can we change in the future? So this session is designed as fishbowl conversation, so we have this chair here, and in order this experiment to be successful, we need your help. So I hope that you will take participation. So the chair is for you. Whenever you have any kind of comments, your additional reflections on some things that you will be hearing from our panelists today, please just join us here and make your statements. With me today, I'm pleased to welcome our initial discussants, Ms. Jelena Bojović from the National Alliance for Local Economic Development, Tamara Bresjanac from the Public Secretariat of Serbia, and Iskra Belcheva Ristovska from the Center for Change Management in North Macedonia. We are missing here Ms. Sabi Osmani from the Women Economic Chamber in Albania. Unfortunately, she couldn't come here yesterday and today for the conference. So let me start with some opening question for the discussion, and maybe to start with Jelena. So the question is, when we talk generally about the inclusive policy making and legislative design, for all of you, what this actually means. What inclusiveness mean in practice? Is it consultation? Is it co-creation? Is it shared decision making? Or from your point of view, what we could say is definition of actually co-creation?
Well, we have, I would say, a process that we designed within our organization, how we can contribute as a businesses or sometimes citizens or civil society organizations in any part of the process of decision making on the government level. So these are there are 6 steps that we follow every time. The first one is the identification of an issue or a problem. So this is the part where we expect the most businesses participate in this first phase of the process. But identification of the problem itself is just the initial understanding of the problem. Second one is the analysis and understanding deeper the problem and comparisons that we do across European countries, region, better understanding. Again, the participation is needed from any of us, because a majority of our members in knowledge contribute to the deeper understanding of the problem itself. And this is the key element, because by understanding the issues that they have and the opportunities that they have in other countries, it helps us communicate as a third or fourth step towards the government itself. The third step for us is advocacy, meaning wakening up everybody, understanding that there is an issue, that we know why it exists, that we know in depth what are the conclusions of our analysis, and what we see as a potential problem solving. The fourth step is we push the government to let us participate in designing the policy. We do it in different ways. One of the ways that we do is participate in the working group itself. The second way is we participate in public hearings or in early warnings, because we do not wait for them to start with the legislation. We send all of our analysis, problems, or we anticipate when because they have this yearly plan of adoption of the legislation that is not followed but nevertheless we know that it exists. So we send our suggestions before that, and then we try to participate while the working group is working on the legislation, to participate in the process. We also try to contribute in the development of the legislation by sending regulatory impact assessment analysis, something that they need to do anyway, and they are happy to receive any data that they can actually implement in the process itself. So this is how we contribute. Of course, public hearings and any part of the designing of the legislation. Next step that we participate in, I know that probably a majority of people think that this is the end, but for us it's not. We participate heavily in implementation of the new legislation, so trying to understand how to implement it best. And then what we also do is we do monitoring and evaluation of the implemented solution. Sometimes we participate also in the implementation of the software or education of the participants. For us, it's all important because this is the key problem in Serbia is implementation of the legislation, not the legislation itself. So this is the whole process that we participate as the organization that actually does advocacy. This is what we do.
Okay, Tamara, from your point of view.
Thank you. Well, Jelena mentioned several important phases. My understanding, and I would say that it is not enough to be included only after the draft already exists and then start with comments, providing comments. That's not what makes the consultation process quality. Not even the length on the number of the comments. What is important is who is the part of the conversation and who are the people and organizations that actually helped in defining the problem, definition of the problem. And then further on, with whom we communicated, with what methods of consultations we used, and how many efforts we made to reach those that are actually the targeted group of the strategy or policy document or a regulation. Another important point that Jelena made was the impact assessment. And it's really good practice what NALE does, but I would say that it is important to hear the voices of those who are organized and who have capacities to organize. But what is maybe even more important is to hear those that are not capable to be organized and that they don't have enough capacities to react on what is the key issue or the point of conversation. And last but not the least, the implementation. That's another thing. So as I come from the Public Policy Secretariat, we all know that the part of the public policy documents are action plans, and that the bodies have an obligation to report on annual basis. We do follow the level of implementation as well. That is very important point that Jelena made, is that our consultation process does not end with a public hearing. It should be, so the targeted groups or the stakeholders should be involved in following the results and the impact of one policy, as the results of that become the part of the ex post or ex ante for the further policy making.
Thank you. Iskra, for the Macedonian case, what is the status? We are speaking about, regulation what regulates. We will later on go into implementation of those regulations.
So how it's regulated?
How it's regulated and your understanding of this co-creation process?
My personal understanding, and especially after all the discussions during yesterday and this morning, I mean, this should not be political charity. This should be an inclusive process from start to finish. And this is what we're all trying to do. And being here as part of a wider civil society in our region, it's really important to remind ourselves that it's our mandate as civil society to be the bridge between the citizens and the institutions and decision makers. So this is what we are doing. How it is actually mandated in Macedonia is that we have the mandated consultations. Of course, we have this national portal for publication of acts, but this is again something that we need to change in practice, because the way it is set up now is that the laws are published with a 90% drafting completed. So it's really not so impactful if we engage in consultations afterwards. We do the same things as NALET is doing. Of course, we publish our reports on the implementation and everything. The problem is, of course, the feedback loop, the gaps in this loop, that we don't have feedback very often on how much of our input has been accepted, and this is what we're trying to do. On the other hand, again, as civil society is trying to include everybody in society, the various groups, we have various mechanisms that we can engage in, even though they're not regulated as such, but this is something that should not be regulated. This is up to us to find creative ways of engaging the public, and especially the marginalized groups. I mean, in the end, what we see with bad governance is that it impacts the most vulnerable in society. Of course, the more privileged are not going to be affected by bad governance as much. So, in terms of inclusiveness, yes, of course, we are engaged in all the steps in the process, but in terms of how the institutions are perceiving it, how they are accepting it, this is where we need to push further.
Actually, that's my next question. You already touched upon this. Whether Western Balkans countries moved from this tick-the-box approach to beyond this formal consultation. I can bring the example of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is definitely tick-the-box approach. So there is some rule that says that everything has to go to the public consultation, and they are using even e-tools or whatever to tick the box, and in the report of legislation when it comes to the adoption, it says that public consultations were held. But in practice, how behavior of the government towards those recommendation, analysis, and other things that were prepared by citizens and civil society organizations, how they were received. That's the main issue.
Yeah, if I can take up the circle in a reverse.
You already started with answering this question.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we provide the input, we accept to get the feedback on what has been accepted and what has not been accepted and why. One thing is that this is not happening, and the other thing is that the government and now even the members of parliament have been using and abusing this shortened procedure in parliament and proposing laws that are urgent in the name of EU accession, so they don't go through the regular procedure. There is no way of intervening in these laws that are completely drafted and passed towards Parliament on this fast track. So they tick the box towards the EU. They don't tick the box with consultations internally in the country, but on the other hand, they are justified with this EU fast track. So this is, again, something that was mentioned yesterday. I think it's common for our countries. This is something that we're facing right now, which is really, I don't know, I think it's an increasing problem. It's been existing, but it's even increasing.
Yes, well, from a short experience of working in Public Policy Secretariat, I can agree. There's multiple layers again. There is the tick-the-box practice of we publish it, we respected the deadline for the public hearing, or we did organize a few consultations within the working group. We collected this or that amount of comments and responded to this or that amount of comments. From the formal side of view, where the Public Policy Secretariat can respond is just providing an opinion on the RIA or PIA. which includes the reports on consultations or some information about the consultations. There is no that much attention given to the quality of consultations. And where we started to react is exactly what Iskra mentioned is, okay, so you received 20 comments and you responded to 20 comments. What were the responses? If you reacted, where exactly in the document you reacted, accepted or not accepted? But what I also think is important when we speak about the quality of the comments and ticking the box where no comments received, we publish it on e-consultations portal, no comments received. That doesn't mean that the consultations were done and that they were done in a quality way. It is important to note that when there's no comments, doesn't mean that the consultations were done great and no one has anything to say. It means that we failed to reach maybe the most vulnerable groups or the targeted groups. So digital tools like e-consultation portal are helpful, but are not the only and the solution for the issue of inclusiveness. My point is that whatever consultations, whoever is doing it and whatever consultations we're doing, it's our job to think of different methods, how to approach and how to reach those that are targeted with the policy. And I think in the previous Fishbowl conversation, that was one of the takeaways, is that these people had an opportunity to be heard for the first time. The trust is gained by these local projects. And now what do we do with that trust? How do we, how to continue and make the voice be heard in the future as well?
Thank you. From your side, I think that you have experience.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say, that I think that the last 20 years I deal only with public-private dialogue and policy making. So this is what I do for 20 years. So I can give variety of situations where and how we approach this issue. For me, it's proven that you have to start much before the draft law is there. So at the level of the draft law, maybe 5% of comments are being implemented. And there are a variety of reasons why. Sometimes I participate in the working group itself, and when we receive the comments, we are so much deep in the decision that we already made that we cannot go and do it from the beginning, because some of the comments restructure completely the policy that we made. So we made the decision already, so it's too late. I have example where we did reform on parafiscal charges. These are some fees and the charges that every one of us pay in the process. First time when we mentioned this issue and the problem was 2011. From 2011, every year we approached, I have documentation that we at least 20 times wrote to Ministry of Finance, 20 times a year since 2011, to do something about this, and we had 5 events per year regarding parafiscal charges, regional, local, so we did it really for 10 years. And the change happened in 2024, 2023 with the reform agenda. We approached EU with this, and we've been approaching EU all the time for these past 10 years about these parafiscals. And finally, it was in the reform agenda, and then within the reform agenda, it was said that parafiscal charges will be dealt with, and of course then they involved us in the legislation making, in the working group and everything else. But at that point in 2024 when we started, we already had 7 registries of parafiscal charges. We had all of the legislation drafted already and ready just to give it to the working group. We also have regulatory impact assessment for all of the legislation. And we had a regional analysis, and this is the momentum where it was implemented. So, and then when we had the draft law, it wouldn't matter, because whoever gave a comment on the draft law, it was so much late. In 2011 we started the whole thing. So this is the example of one legislation and one. But for example, we just had a public hearing in Nalet regarding the draft legislation, tax legislation. That is dealing with subsidies for disabled persons, that they actually cut from the legislation the draft legislation, and we had it today. And we do know, because we represent mainly big companies, but because of this very important issue for our whole community, we organized this public hearing with organizations that are supporting disabled people. And we were all ready, because we as NALED, we played the role of helping everybody to set their own arguments in a way that can actually awake Ministry of Finance. So Ministry of Finance was sitting there, and we orchestrated the whole thing. There were 7 people saying, and we knew who will say what from the beginning, and all of the analysis that was done. And then I have an SMS that I got a few moments ago from the Ministry of Finance saying, can you send us the analysis that you did? I need it urgently. This means that they are awake, although now it doesn't deal with the disabilities or so, but we tried, because it was for us important that we participate in this, in something that is very important for us. So we have different approaches. Sometimes we do it like a public hearing is now, let's organize ourselves as soon as possible and do something about it. And then I gave the example from 2011. So yeah, there are many different aspects of this process.
If you put aside your efforts and your strategies when it comes to the advocacy for the legislation, if consultation disappears tomorrow, as the process within the government, now we are speaking about governments, whether the outcomes of the policy would be significantly different than that we have now.
Absolutely. I believe that 70% of the legislation is better thanks to suggestions that come from every one of us. And I can see that because during these meetings that we have in the working group, when someone says something, we are like, aha. I personally worked on legislation that was mine. I worked for the government for some of the policies. And then when someone gives me a completely different perspective, I know everything about the topic, but then still the perspective of someone who's implementing it in a different way makes me, completely aware that we need to change something completely. I don't understand why in some cases government doesn't allow people to say their thoughts and they feel offended because I don't. In the cases where I'm in this position, I feel that they're helping me to understand better the topic that I'm working on. So I believe that this type of relaxation between the people that, you don't have to attack the government doesn't need to defend themselves. But this is the most common case in Serbia, unfortunately. I don't know if that's the situation in other countries, but we keep like attacking and defending. And I think this is something that we need to try to avoid and try to find, how each one of us can help the government and how government can help us. I think that's important.
Thank you.
Maybe theoretical, but.
Yeah, thank you. I mean,
We have the same objectives.
Well, it doesn't have to.
please.
I think yes, but we need to have the same objectives with the government. If they're trying to go against the objective, for example, of a merit-based top civil service, no matter what you do, no matter how good the solution is, no matter how much how much we consulted it with the foreign community, with Sigma, with everybody, we developed everything. If the objective is not to be so ambitious and not to actually establish something, but rather to tick the box for EU purposes, then of course, no matter how many public consultations and everything we have, no matter how much of our inputs they say that they have accepted, in the end it goes to governmental procedure, and then in the parliament it goes in a completely different format. This is just an example.
So I would like to remind all of you to join us here. Next time I will name you, so please. So you are mentioning this interaction between governments and NGOs. I think that in our region still NGOs and governments are seen as opponents. What can we actually change in order to understand that we should be partners? The guilt is partially on both sides, yes. But how to change that attitude from both sides?
In some cases, whatever you do, it doesn't help. So we have some ministries, and I'm not going to name them, but in some cases we have excellent relationship and trust, and they know that what our suggestions are coming from our heart, in a sense, and knowledge. In some cases, we cannot even reach the point of sending or understanding if they received our comments and suggestions. So generally, I'm called in Serbia Pitbull because I keep doing it all the time. So for me, the only way that I understand is just keep doing. So, whatever, at the end, they will change or something will change. So this is the only way I would say that you have to, try understanding why they don't want something. Because we have, for example, I'm working on the policies that are regulating drugs, medicines. And the pharmaceutical companies, they are like, we need more money, more drugs in Serbia because our patients are dying and whatever. Very legitimate request. We need more funding for drugs and medicines. On the other hand, you have to understand, cuts in budget, 2% lower, excise, energy crisis, is the government is going to do that or not? So we have to find a way that within the budget we say, okay, let's make these cuts and make it, so the approach is also sometimes really important, understanding their reason for saying no. I understand that sometimes we are just on the opposite. We want something that they don't, it's political, but sometimes it's just how you ask for what you want, understanding their reasoning behind the decision.
Putting the politics aside, yes, of course. As it's a shared responsibility of both sides, I think the solution is in openness of both sides and readiness to not just listen but to hear what the other side is sharing. For example, what comes on my mind first is the civil society should be creative enough to think of different methods, in different ways, how to include and how to prove the statements of the civil society. On the other side, the government should be open to allow different methods to be, and results of different methods to be used. In the ex-ante analysis and in the regulation that regulates public policy documents, we do not it's not limited to use different methods of gathering proofs or evidence when you're describing the current state. So one really good example of what came as an initiative from youth is the youth test. When they approach and said, like, can we use it? It doesn't say that you can. So yes, go ahead and use it and pilot it. And if it works, let's think about how we can introduce it as a practice in the future, or a gender test, or a SME test. So I think that finding mutual ground is the openness to hear each other is what would make the difference.
Iskra?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Yeah, I mean, of course, just keep on doing it. It's again, this is our mandate. But I don't think it's a question of expertise. The governments in our region already know that there is a lot of expertise in the civil society sector. I think they know that we do a lot of analysis, a lot of data gathering, and all of this. We have an open relationship with the international community. They regard us as partners in many areas. The governments are also regarding us as partners in many areas, and then it comes to the political decisions. But then, on the other hand, I think the governments are going to have to accept us as equal partners, because one of the crucial problems, I think, and I name it not as an issue but as a problem in our societies, is the young people leaving, the brain drain, the decreasing of capacities in our society. So everything that we can gather in society as quality expert input is going to be valuable for the institutions. So I think, especially for Macedonia, because Macedonia is decreasing in population rapidly, I think because of this problem of not finding enough expertise in the institutions, they have to rely on our expertise as well, and regardless of partners.
Thank you. From perspective of civil society, I must say that from the government side, I think that it has to be more openness towards the not only civil society, but the other social actors within the process of decision making. One example of Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are for a long time in the process of reform of judiciary. And in the process of adoption of new law on high judiciary and prosecutorial council, and ministry was pretty much closed in the process of pre-drafting. We were trying to, step in on different kind of ways to be at least observers within the working group to through that way to provide our opinion on some things, but we were not allowed. And then we've been in a situation, this is directly related to lowering the level of transparency of decision-making process in the last couple of years, at least in Bosnia, that we were invited by Venice Commission on a meeting on the new draft law. And we said, okay, we would love to, but we don't have that text. And then we actually received the text from the Venice Commission, not from the ministry in Bosnia. So it actually shows the attitude of governments. We don't want to include anyone in the pre-drafting phase. And then we have problem when it comes to the draft phase that's very hardly to influence any changes in that. And you have to use all other approaches and efforts, but the end results of those efforts is significantly lower than if you are included in a pre-drafting phase. Unfortunately, in our country, in Bosnia, inclusiveness of civil society and other actors, I mean, in this process, even this professional organization of judges and prosecutors were not involved. So ministry just wanted to have that, and that is one of the main, that was key pre-requirement for opening negotiations. So they were using that, and of course everything goes in urgent procedure in order not to give any kind of opportunity actually to provide your thoughts or recommendation. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please just introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. I'm Nirvana Deliu from European Movement of Albania, project director. Actually, I wanted to shift a little bit of the perspective. Maybe it's only Albania's case, but I think that we can find some similarities. As you know, Albania now is in this intensive phase when we want to finish negotiations until 2027, which means it's a very intense process of legislative adoption. It is assumed that maybe we have like 500 legislative acts that we should adopt from scratch or amend the ones that we have already. So it means that it's immense work for the administration, but it is an immense work for the civil society organization to follow up with all these changes and of course to have a very meaningful participation in giving recommendations. So I was inspired about the fact that you said that the capacities of CSOs, but now we see in Albania that when it comes to capacities of CSOs, we are lacking in two dimensions. First, the time and the intensity. We can follow all of them. We can be there for every change of legal act that it is made. And if you see our emails, we are like informed for about 5 legislative acts in each week. So it means that there is a very intense process. And the second one is the technical aspect of the process. If you do, I don't know, resume of CSOs in Albania, I guess 50–60% of them are mostly focused on rule of law, human rights, democracy, but the reform process, it's not all about that. So we have topics and issues that you can find experts, like, I don't know, environment, agriculture, food safety, consumer protection. There are even the chapters that we are mostly lacking, or even, I don't know, the 4 freedoms of movements and other issues that we don't have the capacities, we don't have the expertise. And the second element I wanted to mention is about, is it true that actually our laws are good, even in adoption? Because what we see, and I'll give you an example, we have recently 2 laws that were adopted, law on lobbying and law on sponsorship. And surprise, surprise, we had an expert from Hungary that worked on those laws. We are, as CSOs, directly affected. We weren't asked before the process. We were asked only when the draft laws were there. And of course, we as CSOs were directly affected. As in Albania, I guess, in all Western Balkan countries, 80% of donors are from the international donors. So now we were being called foreign agents and stuff. So we actually did some consultations, and the law was changed more or less. But what about the other laws that we can follow? What happens with them? So they are just adopted, and we don't know how the effect, the implementation will come. Even if they are good implemented, they weren't properly drafted, and they didn't get, let's say, into consideration all the specifics and peculiarities of Albanian society. Because of course we say, you asked us, we are respecting EU standards, but still, it's not saying that you copy-paste it and do it like Motamo, but still keep into consideration the reality of Albania. And the last thing, I don't want to be very long, about the negotiation process, we are in the dark. We don't have any kind of documents. I think Montenegro is better than us in this regard. So, for example, negotiation positions of Albania, we can find it anywhere. And they say, it's a secret. We just send it to the Commission. It's not for you. But they are negotiating our future, and if you don't know what are transitional periods, what are the conditions that we have had to EU to take into consideration, it will be very late, even if we are properly included in a consultation after that to change something and to make something better. Thank you. I don't know if...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, of course.
I told you at the beginning that I'm going to take over the mic, so you have to stop me. I have experience in implementation in the legislation that is adopted in 2014, and the bylaw is from 1992. And they keep, so it's the same bylaw, so we cannot implement the law that is actually really good, but the bylaw is from 1992, and so there is a conflict between two legislation. And we do something called the regulatory RIS, it's called Regulatory Index of Serbia, that actually follows the phases of the development and implementation of the legislation. And one of the worst part of this whole process is actually adoption of the bylaws. On average, they are 300 days late. Meaning if they say in the law that they will adopt the bylaw in 3 months, they are like year and 3 months. So, and it keeps being like that, and we have issues even when the law says, you know, the agency will do that, and then the agency doesn't do it in 7 days, but 25 days, and you cannot do anything about it. So it's like with the property, it's with the medicines and drugs, it's with, you know, so in every, and then when you go deeper into that, the agency has 17 people and they need to have 34, and they don't have 34 because the commission that allows them to employ these people did not allow it. The commission didn't allow because it was not budgeted by the ministry, and so on and so on. You know, so this is you know, when we start going deeper into why some things are not functioning, it's I would say it's not because of the law. It's because of all other things that need to happen in order to, the whole structure, I guess, is a problem.
I can add on this that definitely practice in Bosnia that because you cannot define everything by the law, so you have to do it by laws, regulations, and they are actually using this process because this process is less transparent than the process of adoption of the law, and they are weakening the law and measures within the law through the.
we don't have public consultation for bylaws.
In Bosnia, there is e-consultations, but we will got to the point to speak about e-consultations and what they actually means. So definitely they are using that opportunity to weaken those provisions within the law, because law were not so, very strictly defined, and they leave themselves the space actually how to the implementation of the law not got to the point, at least in this part that Transparency International is involved on corruption. So we can see that attitude of the institution that through the bylaws actually they are weakening all of these measures that were supposed to be there. Dardan,
yeah.
Please.
Thank you. Dardan Abazi, Institute INDEP in Kosovo. I just wanted to add another element, and that is that we as civil society I don't think we should just be those who contribute directly in the public consultations with the things that we care about, but we also need to be enablers for other NGOs who are less capable than us to participate in the public consultations. In Kosovo, we do have a very good infrastructure in terms of legislation and also some instruments in place, such as the public consultation platform, and also some very good practices of the Kosovo Parliament to really engage external experts, civil society opinions in the legislative process. But sometimes these processes and these documents are very technical for other NGOs to really be able to contribute, or citizens in general to be contributing. One example is the Energy Regulatory Office in Kosovo that publishes these public consultations on different processes such as tariffing or licensing and other issues that directly affect citizens and sometimes even geographically focused communities. We as INDEP, because energy is one of our specialized scope of work fields, we get these documents and try to translate them into the language that more citizens would understand, more NGOs in the working in the grassroots level would understand, because sometimes there are 10 pages of a document, 5 of them are formulas of technicalities of how they calculated prices or licensing processes, and I think it is needed and more needed for us to play this role. Other than that, I think there are also issues having to do with the European integration perspective of the whole region. It used to be a time in which when European Union said something had more impact in our institutions than it has right now. We had the growth plan as part of the reform agenda as part of the growth plan that went without public consultation at all in Kosovo. And I think EU in this case can play a role into putting more conditionalities having to do with more participation of citizens and more voices being heard before a document gets adapted. That I think also us as civil society need to fight more to have these preconditions in place like we used to more in the past. These are just the 2 small messages that I wanted to share.
Thank you. I definitely agree with you that a bigger organization needs to provide support for grassroots organizations because they don't have either experience, knowledge, or capacities to do that. So that's why I think that those organizations, especially organizations that are more focused on resource centers for civil society organizations, should be involved in that role. You were mentioning reform agenda. Now I can defend Bosnia in this case. We didn't sign because because of the lack of transparency in the process. We still didn't ratify the reform agenda, so we don't need money, we don't need anything from the European Union. Yeah, of course.
Just to add up on what you said on the technical issues and how much capacities we have, of course, we are not replicating the government. We don't have capacities in all the areas that the government is working. It's still a huge apparatus, supported with a whole budget of the country. But in terms of the capacities that civil society has, I think these are already recognized. When it comes to the capacities of the other actors in society, smaller CSOs and even citizens, I think this is not, of course, mandated. We need to find ways. But for example, RIA is a really good way of translating the technical issues on how they would affect the various groups in society, how they would affect, of course, the social, environmental, economic aspects, and all of this. And this is why us as Center for Change Management, we supported the introduction of RIA many years ago, but now we are pushing forward that everybody should be knowledgeable to actually assess these issues in civil society, especially because we are working in various areas. But RIA is a way of translating the technical issues on how they would affect citizens. So I think it's one of the ways that we have now. In terms of whether they're obliged or not obliged, I am surprised that Albania is not opening up to the expertise in civil society, actually, because in my view, this is one point in time when you need to engage all the expertise that you have in society, especially because the institutions are not capable of processing all of these documents. Yesterday, I think it was Milena that mentioned maybe we should have a legal obligation in all of our societies to include civil society as a, yes, and citizens, I mean, as an obligation because of the legalistic culture in societies. Otherwise, there are multiple ways, of course, of intervening.
I like what Dardan said about the responsibility of bigger organizations to support smaller and especially some groups, some specific groups. I mentioned this act that was done by the Ministry of Finance, but also for years we had issues with the smallest businesses, entrepreneurs. We cannot reach them for their feedback on the legislation. So because if you're a shoemaker or whatever, you deal with your everyday life and you're like, which law? I don't care. Leave me alone.
Bring something else. Yeah.
But this is definitely the responsibility of us as the organizations that need to address these issues and in timely manner involve and translate the legislation to these people and do RIA in proper manner so that they respond to the questionnaires, because we need data. How long does it take for you to go and do this and this document in order to have quality RIA, and they have to respond. I don't know how long does it take, and what are the issues, and how many papers he needs to submit, and how much he's charged by some authority, to do something. We need this support from them in order to act upon them. So so I would agree, we need to be more responsible as the organizations that represent some parts of the system and involve as many of these that are not capable or whatever, have other problems to participate. This is for sure. And then I just wanted to make a joke, because now it was set up 2006. And then we've been dealing only with one topic. It was National Alliance for Local Economic Development. So we were dealing with local economic development only. So local governments and, now we have 8 sectors: agriculture, environment, energy, property, digitalization, innovation. Because of all of these, we identify that there is a lot of lacking the capacity to advocate for some of these topics. So I believe it's needed, so we are needed.
Thank you. Before I include two of you, I just one reflection. We were mentioning yesterday, also you were mentioning today, RIA. The main question is the capacities of institutions to do RIA. I think that at least in Bosnia, but in other countries, that we have problem with those capacities. And I see that the big opportunity for civil society, but unfortunately governments still do not use civil society in that way to help them in RIA. I'm speaking about my country. So I think that combined effort from the institutions and from civil society could bring more quality RIA assessment, which could actually help to even to communicate those legislation towards the direct towards the population that directly affected by legislation. We have 2 more.
One thing.
Yes.
Very short one. Actually, we have a structure under your accession negotiation, the partnership platform on EU integration. We have 33 round tables that for each chapter there is a round table when the civil society actors, business community, but even academia can enter and be member of that. And as I said, for chapter 23, for chapter 24, now we have even a round table for public administration reform. The consultations are more or less working, but only for draft laws. For other chapters, they are almost inexistent. But the issue is about negotiation positions that are not published. So I just took this example, but still consultations are going and these roundtables are working, let's say. So yeah.
Thank you.
And if I can just add on RIA. RIA is not actually my personal field, it's PIA, Policy Impact Assessment, but I do share your opinion about the capacities, what you guys are facing in civil sector. I can confirm that the government is also facing with lack of capacity to actually check if the RIA or PIA was done properly. Speaking of policy impact assessment, the rules are general. You are supposed to do 5 or 6 type of analyses, but it doesn't say to what level of details. It should be evidence-based, but it doesn't direct you where, what's the source of your information. And that's another thing that Jelena mentioned, like, yes, it is our responsibility to go towards the targeted groups and make efforts to make them answer our questions. So again, I'm gonna return to the usage of different methods of collecting. Like what I found really interesting is one of the, and I apologize if someone is here from UN, there was one UN project. They were targeting, again, youth, and they thought of a small pop-up app or something that would pop up on their Instagram profiles asking a really short question, like 2 to 3 seconds of their attention, because we know now that the time frame of attention span is really lowered. And that way they're collecting the feedback or their thoughts on certain topics and trying to translate these regulation language, legislation language, policy language to simplify it and bring it to their understanding, and then involve them through different waves of communications that they are using in their everyday life. So what I'm trying to say is, again, it is on us to try to use different methods of collecting those data that are really important to have the evidence-based policies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to use this opportunity where we have the experts, and as you mentioned that you had a roundtable yesterday with the Ministry of Finance. I'm delighted to hear that, really, and because we heard that part of the disability community, and we were thinking on what, I mean, it's completely crazy. I just wanted like briefly to ask you, is there anything, the data that you have, something that you could also share maybe with us, because I'm thinking we need to have a public campaign now to make this out of a space. This is one question. Another question is, I would fully agree with what you said before. Like, if you want to have an impact on the policy, it's best to be the part of the working group, because later on, everything gets. I mean, we can write comments. I don't know. We wrote many comments, and usually none of them. Sometimes they are like adopted. Most of the times they're not. But we were lucky, and actually, the entering these working groups is a kind of problematic for us because like we have some criteria of the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and so on. Sometimes, it depends how they are checking on that. But we were lucky to be part of the working group working on some rule book, which is very important for the social services for persons with disabilities. And we managed to get, and then of course we could see that you can then have a say and like initiate discussion and everything. And we managed to get the draft. The question now for us is really, how can we follow up? We are now happy to have the draft, and now of course we know that there is a consultation process with the Legislative Secretary at the Ministry of Finance, but we are a bit worried that this draft will be lost. Is there anything now that we can do in the process? Is there any advice that you can give us? Because we are just feeling we've done so much, and now we don't know, maybe elections will be tomorrow, and then this all work will be just gone. So if there is any suggestions, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Well, definitely send your comments back to these. Send us as well, and I will send you our position on these taxation models that we just sent to Ministry of Finance. But we try to involve as many organizations as possible. Of course, we cannot even sometimes reach everybody, but we can exchange and give you that. And for the bylaw that you did on, or if I understood, you did some comments on the bylaw, or.
Yeah, we're part of the working group for the bylaw.
And you're worried that it's not going to be implemented?
Yeah, I'm worried that it will be lost in this consultation process with the Legislative Secretariat, Ministry of Finance. Yeah, I'm just worried that it will be lost somewhere in this consultation process because it needs to gets approved at least by the legislative secretariat, Ministry of Finance, maybe Republican secretariat. I'm not sure because it's a bylaw. So I'm just thinking how we can kind of ensure that this process moves. We are in touch with the sectoral ministry, but they are responding and not responding. And I'm not sure if there's anything we can do as just we are part of the, if there is any advice or maybe that nothing can be done, but just to get your view.
No changes will be done without the ministry. So anything that is being passed by the zakonodavstvo or anybody there, Ministry of Finance, it will go back to the ministry. So they are the ones that need to implement these changes, whomever gave them. So they are the focal point. Concentrate on them and just push back. Yes, this is the only advice I can give because without them, it's not going to change. So
Because they have
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Marija Lukić and I'm coming from Standing Conference of Towns and Municipalities in Serbia. I'm a little bit intruder in this group, but Milena asked me to share some local perspectives on the process of consultations, and I hope I will share the experience that unfortunately isn't contributed by my organization, but the organization that worked with the local self-government, Helvetas, maybe you know them. And I was personally informed about the fantastic example that they reached a couple months ago while what a logical reaction. Mobile toilets make children play without interruption in the parks. And of course, they got it. So I think that those children who were asked of 6 years of age, that what they want by the local self-government will be the ones who will be demanding the same approach for the rest of their lives. And I think that it's possible if you start to look at the goal as a joint goal, and if you really start to think that the public consultations are the beneficial for both sides. It's not like you are representing the group of people, vulnerable women, disabilities. You are representing all of us. Because all of us can be sometimes in the situation. And all of us are in the same situation, citizens living in this community. So I think that that maybe sounded idealistic, but it really happened, and it's possible.
Yeah, I totally agree that the room for this kind of cooperation between citizens, interested groups, and governments at the local level are much other, considering that 90% of the life is happening in the local communities, and citizens are more, demanding towards the local communities than towards the government. I usually say that citizens in Bosnia have direct contact with Council of the Ministers only when they are actually living out. Not the elections. I mean, they do not communicate with Council of the Ministry when they erase themselves from the citizenship of Bosnia because they are gathering citizenship of the other countries, and they have to go to the ministry at the state level, to pay some taxes and leave the country. So that it is very hard to ask from the citizens to have the direct engagement with the highest level of government in the country. But on the other hand, you have very specialized civil society organization, you have business community who are very interested in that topic. And I think that governments still do not use that potential that is actually around in process of decision making to increase the quality of the laws. Sometimes is intentionally, sometimes it is only because of the lack of practice that we are missing all in the region on that. But I must say that sometimes it's very intentional not to include anyone in the process. Stanka?
I don't want to sound very pessimistic, but I will.
But I will.
I will focus on Serbia only and say just a few words about the capacities, the organizational capacities and the administrative capacities. Organizational capacities of civil society sector first. I guess one of the worst news I have heard recently is that in Serbia there are some 39,000, correct, registered NGOs all across the country, but many of them will have to close or shut down by the end of this year, not later than that, for the lack of funding and also for not only the lack of funding of the EU or other donors, but also because of absolutely lack of funding at the municipal level. So that's one, the facts of life. The other thing, and I think actually Emsad mentioned that, so one of the lessons in terms of EU integration we learned at the beginning, is that 70% of EU standards and the legislation is actually implemented at municipal level. Since then, or over the last 15 years, and I think Nalet was the one who initiated you remember that the local development offices, the LED offices, which today are not really operating anymore, or some of the people who were competent enough were moved to other departments, or simply the unit was transferred to some other tasks and responsibilities. So at the moment, and that would be my third point, we would be, so the civil society which still has the capacity to operate and to, how to say, still has the willing to work with the local governments, which are very closed at the moment, so we're not really responsive. I come from the north of Serbia, Vojvodina, and that's the unfortunate case. We would actually face entering a new stage or new, I would say, challenge. And if we do not turn to the private sector, I think we will be in a big problem. So those who are willing to contribute, to educate citizens, to do the programs which are related to education for active citizenship, so to engage young people, which is something we are doing now, we will have to turn to the private sector. And I will mention one example from Subotica, from my town, which somehow stirred the local government as well. We have an NGO established by a huge company, InfoStud or Inspira Hub. I don't know, you might have heard. They started very early the online businesses and so on. And the founders of this huge business also never received any response from the local government to work, together. We also organized some sort of network of NGOs still operating in civils, in women's rights, in environment protection. We as a local democracy developers, and establishing especially the youth office, which is still not working in Subotica, but okay, I don't want to get angry. The NGO they established is called IT Subotica 2030. So sounds very good. My colleague.
Sorry, Stan, may I ask you to
I will finish in a second.
Yes. Because I have another set of questions.
Yes.
We are running out of time.
So they are organizing now the small campaigns in neighborhood communities, financing very small initiatives by the citizens that get together around specific needs they have. And can you imagine what happened at the end? And the Finnish ambassador saw somewhere the information, what they do, and he came to Subotica to visit only the IT Subotica 2030 without informing the local government that he is visiting here. And this is also an example. So local government suddenly became interested, what's going on in my town, and we are not aware of that. So that is maybe my optimistic part, because otherwise I don't want to bother the big sharks, from Belgrade organizations.
Thank you.
With that, thank you.
Thank you. We are slightly running out of time, but I have one very important question, at least from my side. E-tools or digital consultation. Some 10 years ago, it was seen as big progress within the region that almost all countries have introduced the e-platform for consultation. But the question after implementation of this decade of e-consultation process, from my side, is it actually only to legitimate the process without any kind of real involvement of others, or in some countries, dare to contrary me, if there is some countries in the Western Balkans actually genuine participation during this process. So whoever wants to start with that.
Well, portal for publication of legislation for public consultations has been in practice in Macedonia for many years now. Yes, it's largely formal because yes, the RIA is published together with the law when the law is drafted. So yes, in most of the cases, this is just a formal consultation. It's not co-creation, and again, there is this gap in the feedback loop. We don't get informed on what has been accepted. On the other hand, we have had some periods when the institutions were more open to organize real consultations and include us from the beginning. Again, our individual efforts vary. For example, my organization established an e-petitions portal some years ago. It was operating together with civil society and engaging them to raise issues and then to raise public support for some of the issues. But this had largely died due to lack of funding. And then we go back, I think, to the main issue that was raised now by our colleague from Subotica. What if we have perfect consultation mechanisms, but we have nobody to consult if a lot of the civil society organizations are closed very soon because the funds are decreasing?
Exactly. So speaking of e-consultation portal, it is good to have digital solutions. It helps transparency. It is not a substitute or replacement for consultations, and it does not offer inclusiveness in that way. So it's a way of transparency, and it's maybe a window for those that think that they may not be heard. They have a draft, so if you put it out there, yes, we'll see it. But is it also a misused sometimes tool to just tick the box? Yes. So we can confirm that it happens in Serbia as well. What we can do is to further improve the portal itself and the technological solutions, but just again observe it as one of the methods of collecting the inputs. It's definitely, technology cannot replace or substitute the direct contact and input that we can get from the target groups.
Thank you.
Definitely it helps. We use heavily consultations, although we are in Belgrade, as Stanka mentioned. All of the public consultations are actually happening in Belgrade. Unfortunately, now Ministry of Finance didn't go all over Serbia. We organize it online as well, so to enable people around Serbia to participate. But e-consultations definitely help these, other communities. But I also have to say there is also an issue. We tried as NALES to organize consultations for e-sick leave law throughout Serbia. And we wrote to every municipality throughout Serbia, whomever wants to give us the place just to come and talk about the legislation. And then rarely any local government responded on our request. Then if there would be some local organizations that we could contact and say, okay, we would like to organize these consultations because we need premises, we don't have also funding for, to go around Serbia and, rent the place to do public consultations and so on. So even though in some cases I believe that there is a lot of organizations, but at the same time we are not very well connected and do not understand who does what, and it's much harder, even if you have a will to do something about it, we don't. So I believe that the e-consultations are not only pro forma, because we put our comments through e-consultations and initiatives through e-consultations. We do it both, through e-consultations and directly, and go to events. So, but I believe it's a tool for especially other communities.
Yeah, definitely they could be actually a good tool for citizens and participation, but in Bosnia they definitely are used as, to legitimate the process, and that's it. Because, one of the examples during the process of adoption of the new law on free access to information, more than 200 comments and recommendations were sent by civil society organizations who are using that tool heavily in their work, and not even one was accepted by minister. So it actually shows the attitude of government. Okay, we have provided you this tool, space to make all of the frustrations that you have through the online portal. We don't have to see you in person, and then we will not accept anything from what comes from your side. Thank you. I think that we are done with this. I had a long list of the questions, but unfortunately we don't have more time. But what can be concluded in this that I think that governments should use more knowledge and expertise from civil society sector in the process of policy design of policies. Civil society should maybe more proactively communicate their expertise that they have in some areas, but I must say that bigger burden is on the level of government in order to include all interested parties. We didn't talk much about those who are usually missing in the process of consultations, and those are vulnerable groups, different kind of vulnerable groups, which are actually directly affected with new legislation. Also, e-tools, I think that all of our countries have those tools, but there is still space for improvement in two-way communication with those who are communicating, because usually when you send, you read the report, and sometimes when they accept some of recommendation and comments, says that this comment is partially accepted. And what means partially? The further explanation, and in Bosnia they don't even publish the new version of the document which included partially adopted recommendations. So I think that kind of two-way communication towards those who are interested in participation in the process definitely should be improved heavily in order to maintain and use this kind of tools for improvement of policy. Yes, for the end.
Just one sentence. Sorry, it's I just think that I mean my message for this group would be that we need to be even more proactive now, because of the pressures, and especially the time pressures connected with the delivery of results, because of the reform agendas under the growth plan, because of the EU accession processes in all of our countries. I'm afraid that the government will be praised for adopting the new legislation and bylaws and everything because of their fast-tracking and just ticking the boxes. And this will be a process where if we are not engaged enough, we will leave a lot of the groups in society behind. So just, I think we need to be even more proactive than we were until now.
Totally agree. Thanks to all of you, because the number of people here is still high. Thank you very much for staying till the end of this. And I think that with this, I think that this part, working part, is over, and Milena has.
So we will first hear from Bruno. Where is Bruno? But I was thinking that maybe it would be good, because Bruno will have a PowerPoint presentation for the keynote, maybe just for everybody who is on that side to move over here. You can also take the chairs if there are not enough of them, because you won't be able to see the presentation. And then we will give the rewards to the winning projects, and then I will just summarize and say bye-bye.